Hey everybody, Dr. Alyssa from Back in Step Physical Therapy here. I wanted to come and share a little bit about what I do as part of my competition prep, getting ready for West Coast swing competitions. One of the things that I really place emphasis on is strength training, not so much stretching and flexibility. That comes with a lot of the things that I'm going to be doing and maybe built into some of the movements that I'm doing, but my main goal or purpose is definitely on the strengthening side. One of my favorite ways to work on this and get a ton of different options is using kettlebells or kettleballs, depending on which way you want to call them. So first, I'm going to start out with some kettlebell swings just to kind of get blood moving, get my heart rate going, and go from there. Okay, then I'm going to be doing some things to kind of work some other parts of my arms with the kettlebell, doing snatches and cleans. Okay, we've done some upper body work. Now I'm going to switch to lower body. We can work in lunges, squats, deadlifts, any of those kinds of things. I'm going to start with some squats. Deadlift. Next, I'm going to work on a single leg deadlift and incorporate a row with it. So I'm getting core, hip, legs, upper body, upper back, all of that good stuff in there. All right, so a lot of times for my dancers, I don't necessarily use a lot of crazy balance equipment with them to work on stability or balance or anything like that. However, for myself, I am choosing to do this on a Bosu ball to work a little bit more on core and stability. One of the things with the West Coast swing, a partnering style, it is almost always improvised unless you're doing a routine of some sort, which really is a really small percentage of the dancing that we're doing. It's most often professionals or people who are hoping to become professionals who are more likely to compete in a routine division. Otherwise, it's almost always improvised. Part of the thing that needs to happen with that, since we're dancing as a partner dance, we have to be able to respond in a split second's notice, whether it is just following our leader, a leader responding to what a follower is doing, or maybe something doesn't go quite right in your communication and you have to recover and change plan quickly. That's the reason I like working on this, because it introduces that concept of not knowing what might be coming. It keeps you on your toes, both literally and figuratively, as we're doing the exercises. What's great about using something like this is you really can do any of your normal upper body type exercises while standing on it. So whether you stand on it with both feet, this is how I like to get on, and I'm purposely training barefoot because the shoes that we wear really don't have much support at all, so I don't want to get used to having a more firm sole on my shoe. So I can do this with both feet on here. I can go through bicep curls, I can do front raises, side raises, military presses, I can do double leg deadlift. I can come over and do bent rows and reverse flies, all of those kinds of movements. Or to really change it up on myself, more like a dance surface anyways, because we do spend a lot of time on one leg, I do this stuff on one leg. So same thing, any sorts of upper body movements that you might normally do, you can do on here. You can do posterior deltoid, triceps, flies, all of that good stuff. Of course, if I were doing this as part of my regular routine, I would stick with one movement, do all of my repetitions and sets with that before I move on to the next one. But this is more to show you options of what we can do. You may also find that there's a difference of working the opposite arm of the leg that you're standing on versus working the same side. I find for a lot of this, it's easier working the opposite, but it's not a bad idea to do both because again, in the style of dancing that I'm doing, I may be getting influence on either arm while I'm on either foot. So any combination is good to practice. You can also practice with your free leg in different positions. You could be slightly turned out on your standing foot versus being totally in parallel. You can work pointed toe in any angle, work in coupe, coup de pied, all the way up to retiré, parallel, an attitude of some sort, because we do sometimes see attitude turns and things like that, usually a pretty low attitude, whichever way that we do it, but we can work any of those things. I can also come and work on a very small releve, or I can push all the way up and see if I can maintain my balance as I'm going through all of these things as well. Another one that I like to do is to do things to train my gluteus medius, my deep stabilizer muscle in my hip. There are lots of ways we can do this on a very sort of starter level where our body is really well supported and we're just kind of working that muscle a little bit. There's things like clamshells where you're on your side and doing like the open book type thing, or leg lifts while you're lying on your side. I prefer doing things while we're upright because that's how my body's going to be functioning as I'm dancing. So doing something like being on the stairs, two different versions here that I like, keeping my pelvis nice and even, trying to bend my standing leg like I'm trying to touch my other foot down, making sure that my knee is staying tracking over my toe as much as possible throughout all of that movement and not letting it collapse inward and let my foot collapse inward. This is a nice workout for this standing leg. And then I also like to do standing leg stays still, pelvis moves up and down. Part of the reason I like this particularly for swing dancing is there are things where we are trying to use our hips a bit and get a little bit of hip movement in there. So I want to make sure that I can successfully control that no matter what I'm doing. So I'm trying to maintain rotation. I'm not letting anything like this happen, but I do want to actually hike my hips straight up and then let it drop down. And so I'm just trying to get a nice smooth path of motion through all of that. The last thing that I'm going to be working on here, and I would do this a lot of times holding on to something because this is not a balance exercise, I call these dancer heel raises. So my feet are going to be up on the step, toes are hanging off of the front edge. If you see me from the side, this is what's happening. I have just the ball of my foot on the step, but my toes are free. And then from here, I can work on heel raises, whether it's double leg with straight legs, double leg with bent leg, or I try doing one leg at a time, which is hard to do without holding on to something for balance. So with this particular exercise, I prefer holding on to something so that I can really focus on clean movement. This is not a balance activity for me. What I like about this is as a dancer, it can be really tempting as we go up into a releve type position to really curl our toes to help with that, or splay our toes to help with balance. By letting the toes hang off the end, it doesn't give us the option to utilize that. We have to rely on strength and control of some of our other calf muscles and of the ankle joint and joints of the foot themselves. So keeping those toes hanging off really forces me to focus. It also forces me to find a really good balance point on the balls of my feet at those metatarsal heads in the foot. And so this is a nice one to work on. And of course, if I was holding on to something, I make sure that I'm really slow and controlled coming both directions. But without that balance assistance, I'm kind of cheating this motion a little bit. So I would modify that for the rest of my set. This gives you a nice idea of some things that we can do that incorporates some cardio and endurance work. We've got some upper body, some core, and some lower body all the way down into our feet. I like these really well-rounded exercise routines. All of this going through the entire thing would probably take me about 30 minutes if I was doing my full set of everything, maybe a little bit longer, depending on how many sets I decide to do, how much I'm deciding to push myself. But that gives you an idea of some of the things that I'm doing for my own body in preparation for a West Coast swing competition that's coming up in just 2 weeks from today.